Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prof series. In this episode, we'll cover a paper by Dr. Richard Vine, Steve Loewen, Dr. Laura Van Eerd, and Dr. Cheryl Trueman. Cheryl Trueman is a researcher at Richtown who specializes in managing the diseases of tomatoes, peppers, and other horticultural crops. Steve Loewen I have introduced prior to this. Laura Van Eerd is a specialist in cover crops at Richtown as well. And Richard J. Vine is a researcher at Richtown campus who specializes in agricultural economics. In this episode, we'll be covering winter cover crops and the impact on processing tomatoes. Let's get started. Processing tomatoes are among the most intensive and lucrative field-grown vegetable crops. It's estimated that processing tomatoes bring in, on average, $70 million Canadian to the sum total of all tomato farms. 90% of all tomatoes in Canada are grown in Ontario and takes place primarily within two southwestern Ontario counties, Essex and Chatham-Kent. These locations have access to irrigation, rainfall, and a much longer growing season than most of the rest of Ontario. There's been extensive interest in winter cover crops to protect the soil during fallow periods, to improve soil quality, reduce erosion, decrease nutrient leaching, and increase organic matter within the soil. Another chief benefit of these cover crops is that extra nitrogen can be scavenged by these crops and potentially released during the next crop cycle. But the farmers must know if those nitrogen compounds will be available to plants when a crop is ready to go next year. Autumn-planted cover crops, especially those that are winter-killed, have not been extensively studied. The closest example is one by Dr. Silvers Young, who evaluates several brassica and cereal cover crops that are planted post-vegetable production in the northern United States. The brassicas, however, winter kill, and the nutrients leak out rapidly during the spring before the crop of that year has any chance of taking it up. Another small study occurred in British Columbia, where they tested out winter-killed barley, cereal rye, and annual ryegrass. It was found that annual ryegrass and cereal rye provide more organic matter than common barley, and both were better than bare soil. There's also been interest in assessing how cover crop species impact the effect of insect pests and diseases within tomato. To see what happens, a cover crop trial was initiated in 2007-2008 on Richtown. The cover crops that are tested were no cover crop, oats, oilseed rash plus rye, and rye, rotated to tomatoes. In essence, at the end of one season, the cover crops are planted, and after they winter kill and turned over in the following spring, no crop was planted and evaluated to see how the crop was affected by the cover crop legacy. Tomatoes were tested for insect damage, disease damage, yield, and quality. And from an organic matter standpoint, and nitrogen scavenging standpoint, oilseed rash scavenged the most, followed by oilseed rash plus rye, followed by rye, and followed by oats. But the amount of nitrogen scavenged did not change that much, and the percent extra nitrogen scavenged ranged between 2 to 2.5%. There's very low decomposition in springtime after the plants died. Oilseed rash released the most nitrogen back into the soil, followed by the air cover crops, which were tied for second place. Very little change occurred in terms of how many kilograms per hectare of nitrogen was added into soil. Oilseed rash was the key winner in all instances in terms of nitrogen fixation and release, and even then only released between 14.1 and 23.6 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen. As such, it's unlikely that the amount of nitrogen you added into the soil should be changed by this cover crop management strategy. Overall nitrogen content within tomatoes was not affected by cover crop treatment. As for yield, the yield was greatest with the presence of oilseed rash within the field. Rye plus oilseed rash, however, was roughly identical to no cover crops in terms of yield. But in all cases, yields with cover crops prior to planting had equal to or better yields than tomatoes without the benefit of a cover crop. The yield increase is unknown in terms of mechanism, but is possibly based in soil mediation. From the perspective of quality, there's no effect of the cover crop within yield differences. Indeed, most of these differences between quality seem to be based entirely on the genetics of the crop itself, and there's no cover crop interaction on fruit quality. From an economic standpoint, all plots across the board that had oilseed rash as a primary cover crop had significantly greater profit margins than those without the cover crop. However, oilseed rash plus rye had the lowest profit margin available. It's estimated that you gain an extra $1,320 with an oilseed rash treatment and an extra $960 of yield per harvest with the oat treatment, comparison to the no cover crop control treatment. The profit margin, however, was reduced by $1,200 per harvest with the advent of the oilseed rash plus rye treatment. As a consequence, for tomato growers, you can get an economic benefit by using oilseed rash or oats as a winter kill cover crop, and that will covers everything. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it and think you can donate, you can do so at Buy Me a Coffee, link in the description below. Thank you for watching.